This is episode number 7, titled Breast Health Awareness, Saving Our Breast Friends, with Lisa Kalison on the Health and Wellness in Encinitas podcast.
This is Lisa Thorpe with Health and Wellness in Encinitas, and today I have Lisa Kalison with Discovery Screenings. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
I'm going to let you start talking about what it is you do, but I just want to make mention that this is especially important right now because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I'm very, very happy that you're going to talk about your movement toward making it Breast Health Awareness Month. Lisa, welcome, and why don't you share a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for it's an honor to be here and for thinking of
thank
me
you.
and bringing me in. I think as many times as our paths have crossed, you certainly know how much I wear my passion on my sleeve about this.
Yes.
So reaching more women with this message is certainly where my heart is most gratified and fulfilled. So let's see. It all started, I was born at a young age in Chicago. Living on the usual hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, and Hostess by the box and cupcakes and all the things that we love to eat. And no thought given to these foods being, healthy or not.
Well, and especially in Chicago, that's a normal diet, right?
I'm
from
from
Cleveland,
same
thing, right?
Yeah. And how many things could you put on a hot dog was, like the records, the record-breaking things. Okay, now we can put, kitchen sink on the hot dogs. But anyway, I was athletic. I was 117 pounds. I competed in high school in volleyball, basketball, and softball. And when I moved to California when I was 20, I started hearing about health. I thought, well, of course we're all healthy. Who would think I wasn't? And but when I had a boyfriend at 21 who got into a car accident, and he went through a bone graft, and he was told by the surgeon that he might limp the rest of his life. Because he grew up in California with this health, quote-unquote, consciousness, he asked the surgeon, what can I do to assure my best healing that I might not limp the rest of my life? And the surgeon, thank goodness, he was a football surgeon, very progressive, and he said, well, I'm going to refer you to a chiropractor who's a nutritionist, and he's going to put you through an intestinal detox and juice cleanse and, clean out your intestinal system and your immune system and reset everything so you get the most benefit from your foods and reset cleanse so you free up your immune system so it's not dealing with toxins, but now it can do its job better. And this was all very new to me. I thought it was healthy. I had been athletic most of my life. At this point, I was about 126 pounds because I'd been out of high school for about 3-4 years. And I thought I was healthy. And when he mentioned that, it was like, well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that together. We're living together. It'll make it easier. And I have to tell you, at this point, I was working in a very busy law office. And I was barely getting breaks as I was training people for other office locations. And I would start every morning with my meal replacements, a bag of M&Ms, a bag of Twizzlers, and a Three Musketeers bar.
Sugar and more sugar.
That tells you how much of a junk food junkie I was at that point. So this was very foreign. Like, are you from another planet? What is this?
You must have had strong teeth.
Oh, I'm telling you. I had no idea what I was in for. It was a 4-week program. And the first week was nothing but juices and doing psyllium and bentonite clay, all these things that cleanse the intestines, kind of like Roto-Rooter.
I'm impressed that you did it with him. You did this program with him.
Oh, yeah. I'm impressed now. When I look back at it, it's like I lost 9 pounds of intestinal plaque in the first week. Wow. I mean, I was 126 pounds. I had no fat to lose.
Right.
So I have to say that was a shocker because I had bounced off the wall energy before this. But what I realized was it was adrenal energy. It was youthful driven energy. But this was the first time, Lisa, that I was getting my energy from my food ever in my life. because it got all this toxic buildup out of my intestines. And now I was getting every bit of nutrition from all this raw and organic food that I was eating. And I felt amazing. I felt
so you really
like I had a new life.
Noticed a difference.
Oh my God. It was like I was walking 3 feet off the ground. I had a mental clarity I'd never had before, a spiritual and emotional clarity and lightness, and a physical energy that was just new to me. It was I really thought I had a lot of energy until I did this, and it was just extraordinary. So that changed my whole trajectory in life, if you can imagine. And it woke me up, because I thought, my God, if looking at what came on me, I thought, if someone can do this much damage in the first 21 years of their life, I better stop now, because I figured I was heading for adult onset everything.
Sure.
And that's what got me on the path of health and wellness, because I was so fascinated, really, that I'd actually survived my childhood. As we started off, I thought, when I look back on what I used to eat, nothing was live, I don't think. I mean, in the summertime, we would sometimes get some things out of the garden, because I had a Sicilian grandfather living downstairs, and so he would harvest some things. But nothing was really live and really nutritious. And it's extraordinary to think about.
It was most common to be eating macaroni and cheese and SpaghettiOs and all that kind of.
That was my favorite craft.
Sure.
Probably shouldn't mention names. But yeah, I mean, you name it. If it was boxed, canned, frozen, cupcakes, and I made all the cakes every week. And so the thing is that I became fascinated with the human immune system. I thought, wow, this is the thing that's kept me alive, literally, to this point, and I wanted to know more about it. So I became voracious, and so I replaced Twinkies and cupcakes with books. I was like eating books from cover to cover about what causes disease, what heals disease, all about the immune system, where we can get our highest nutrients, highest quality nutrients.
And how did all of this lead to discovery screenings?
Well, that's the thing. I was on this new path and became like this researchaholic. So I literally became formally a health researcher. And from that, I filled my brain with so much stuff, I had to become a health educator because it's like my brain was exploding with all this information. So I had to share it. And so I was very outspoken in the community and had aligned with a lot of very gifted natural healers and practitioners, naturopaths and holistic health practitioners and so forth. And at 35, my gynecologist thought he was doing me a favor by starting me early on my mammogram schedule. And back then I had little 34Bs, and it was quite excruciating. No one could have prepared me. They said it might be uncomfortable. And I said, oh my God, this is the most insane thing anyone could do to the precious, delicate breast tissue. I had been on my health path now for 14 years. I was doing intestinal detoxing every year as a measure of prevention. So that's how conscious I was. And, I had become vegetarian. I wasn't eating any sugar and not needing doctors because I was in a preventive mode. So I was preventing any health issues.
And the breast screening felt very traumatic.
Oh my God.
And plus it's radiation.
It was excruciating.
And we know radiation is once it's in, it's not getting out.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Being the health researcher that I was, this is the first time I had engaged in anything that I really didn't do my homework first. Because we're also somewhat indoctrinated.
An assumption that it's safe and that it's effective and it's so promoted as, this is going to help save women from getting breast cancer.
This is the way,
and it's still promoted that way.
That's right. This is the way we screen our breasts.
Right.
It's just the automatic default.
Yeah.
And so when I did it, it was like, wait a minute, something's not right with this. When you look at the anatomy of the breast, there are so many things that could be ruptured just by the compression. Now, when a doctor is taught to do a breast palpation exam, they're taught with their fingers to be very gentle, yet they use 50 pounds of pressure in a mammogram. And when you look at the anatomy, which is already very texturized, our breasts are naturally lumpy. So it's really hard for a woman who's untrained to really know to distinguish something until it's really advanced. So that's, not the best way to screen. And the mammogram with the compression, It can rupture milk ducts, milk glands, lymph nodes, lymph vessels, and all that fluid and tissue that shouldn't be in the surrounding tissue, connective tissue that's ruptured into the area, shouldn't be there. So that in and of itself can damage cells and the DNA in the cells and set the breast tissue up
but
breast
does.
cancer.
I mean, 50 pounds of pressure on a breast is going to rupture or at least bruise the tissue.
At least.
And create some sort of scar tissue.
I've seen many hematomas and women damaged by mammograms.
And I like that you made the point that a self-exam really isn't the most effective way because the tissue is lumpy.
Well, and
it's still a great preventative, and all women should do it. But the point is, there's more effective ways.
Here's the key thing, and this is the thing that most of us don't know, and it's the ignorance is really the saddest element here, is that we're not taught these things. We're not taught that cancer cells are microscopic. So how can something that only sees solid structure or mass see microscopic cells?
Right.
That would be the only early detection. And truthfully, so by the time those microscopic cancer cells have become large enough to be seen by a mammogram, they're 8 to 10 years into their growth and a minimum of 1 to 4 billion cells. So that's not early detection, that's late discovery at best, because that's been in your body all that time and it's had at least a 25 to 35% chance of spreading, metastasizing. So
then even more so once you do the mammogram and squish it.
Well, if there's existing cancer and it's nice and neatly encapsulated in a tumor, that tumor can actually be ruptured, and that creates a wildfire, as do biopsies. And we can talk a little bit about that too, but this is in correlation with this. About 10 million cancer cells fits on the head of a pin, and it takes about 5 to 6 years for that to accumulate. So if 10 million fits on the head of a pin, how many would fit through the puncture hole of a needle, of a biopsy needle? Because a biopsy needle is quite thick. It's got a hollow core because it's got to collect...
Large high gauge needle.
Yeah, and it's got to collect tissue, if not liquid. So if it's solid tissue that they're biopsying, it's got to be thick enough to collect that. So you
Those
think about...
Those cancer cells are then pouring out of that what was isolated tumor.
Yes, that was being literally protecting our bodies from the cells inside there. You know that most breast cancer doesn't ever express itself as full-blown, life-threatening breast cancer. DCIS, LCIS, a lot of these stage 1, stage 0 cancers will never threaten a woman's life. Calcifications are almost as benign as an oyster creating a pearl.
Sure.
Where it's encapsulated that foreign invader, be it a grain of sand or whatever. But that's what our body has done with that calcification. It's taken our own calcium and encapsulated whatever it's perceived as a foreign invader, which could be
it's found something that's that it doesn't want, and it's trying to protect the body from it.
And usually they're fine if they're left alone and dormant. But you start poking into things, and that's where the wildfire is created. I'll give you a statistic that actually relates to men, but it relates to all cancers. 1 in 78 men will die of prostate cancer. If you don't touch it, leave it alone, don't cut into it, don't do anything. 48 and 78 men will die of prostate cancer once it's been biopsied. Lumpectomy, if you will, they remove portions of the cancer or cut it out. So, and that's relative across the board. So anytime you cut into cancer, you risk spreading it. How can you not? I mean, again, they're microscopic cells.
Right.
So if you look at the standard of care and the fact that it takes 8 to 10 years for a mammogram to see something, how long is it going to take for someone to feel it? I mean, that's like the size of a half a pea to a pea. And then if you think about if a woman has already started developing breast cancer, let's say in year 1, and they're doing their first mammogram, by year 8 or 10, they've been crushed and radiated every year and been told that they're all clear.
Right.
Because they can't see it before the 8th to 10th year. Right. And so these women it's misrepresented. They're being given this false sense of security and not being given truly an early warning so they can do something preventive and proactive so it doesn't get to a late stage cancer.
So let's talk about the thermal imagery and the screenings that you do. I'm very fortunate. I'm aware of all of the alternative things available. So I have done thermal imagery to check for levels of inflammation. I've never had a mammogram. I knew right away that I don't want any additional radiation in my body. I don't have any need to have my breasts smushed. So I've never done it, and because I'm fortunate enough to know that there's alternatives that are actually more effective. And I tell female friends of mine all the time, do not get a mammogram. Please go get a thermal image. This is a way more effective and more comprehensive choice. And some people think I'm crazy because they think, oh my God, not get how that's like sacrilege. Like I'm saying something that I might go to jail for when I'm saying don't get a mammogram. But I really mean it. I think mammograms are archaic and dark ages, and they need to
almost
be
torture chamber.
Torture chamber.
Material.
Well, and it's radiation.
Hello.
We know radiation causes cancer. Yes. We know that it's absolutely not safe for the body.
Yes.
And while I agree for x-rays and there is still purpose for it, the least possible is better.
Yes.
So please explain more about the thermal imagery, because I know that it exists, and I love that it exists, but I don't know as much. You're the expert.
Okay.
So
first, if you don't mind my correcting, it's thermal imaging. Because I just don't want them to Google thermal imagery, because that could actually lead more to graphic artistry and things of that nature. So thermal imaging.
Thank you.
And medical thermal imaging, and more specifically, is a physiological reading. So it's more related to functional medicine, meaning that we're reading the function of the body, and we're getting what we call an indication of the thermal activity, which is how the immune system speaks to us. So I very lovingly call it the silent language of the immune system. So we are thermal beings. We have a furnace inside of us. It's always generating at 98.6 degrees. And that heat is generating out all the time. Have you ever been to a wedding and just before they are cranking up the AC because there's going to be 200 people in the room, and then you get those 200 people in the room, and now all of a sudden the AC can't keep up because they're all generating this heat.
Of course.
Well, the camera's picking that up. It's called thermal emissions. So we're not actually imaging the skin, the three-dimensional physical body. We're imaging the energy that's coming off the surface of the skin in the form of temperature, and the software is assigning it a color that correlates intuitively. Red is hot, blue is cold, and blue indicators are actually as important as hot indicators.
Well, and because I know when I had mine, one of the thermal images that I had done, I still had remaining signs of necrosis in the small intestine, which is indicative of leaky gut. And of course, I had been diagnosed with celiacs, and this is something that is important for a lot of people to know, that leaky gut is so prevalent, and they now believe is a precursor to a lot of the chronic inflammatory diseases, lupus, MS, Crohn's, many others. So, so not just for breast health, but for the entire body. The thermal imaging is a wonderful way to determine levels of health and things that can be checked out sooner.
Yes.
So specifically with breast health, what are you looking for, and what's normal, and how soon can it help with detection of something like cancer?
Okay. And thank you for bringing up the other aspects of thermography that we can see, because one of the things I've learned since I've gotten in the business of thermography, and just to preface that, I was using thermography for 10 years as a patient before I actually decided to do it as a business, and really more as a service, because it's more than a job or a business to me. It's my service work, because I became so passionate about it after using it for 10 years. And literally, when I found out what thermography could see, I was like, I want a full body. I don't want just the breast. And that's how I discovered thermography, is because at 40, my new gynecologist wanted to get me on my mammogram schedule. I said, well, you haven't had one in 5 years. Let's get you going. And I said, no, I swore I'm never doing that again. There's got to be another way. And that's how I found my way to thermography. And when I found all the different indicators that I could see, I was like, well, more information is always better than less. If you want to be preventive, I want to see everything thermography can see. So I've been doing full bodies every year for 10 years before I decided to do this as a business as part of my annual preventive physical. So I discovered a lump, and that's when I was like, oh goodness, what do I do with this? Because here I've been on this health path, intestinal detoxing every year at that point for, gosh, I was 49, so since I was 21, long time, 28 years. And it was an interesting scare for me because my husband and I are the people who are carrying coolers everywhere we go, so we make sure we're eating fresh and organic food. And so I went to my gynecologist, the person with the trained set of fingers, and she had the look of terror on her face and said, oh, I have to refer you to a breast surgeon. I'm like, a breast surgeon? You think it's that serious? It can't be. And she said, well, I'm obligated to refer you to a specialist. So I said, no, I think we're skipping a step here. I want to see what my thermography has to say. And so I went, and there was absolutely no issue in that area where the lump was. So I was like, okay, that's first check. And so I went to a breast health specialist, and she taught me that every time a woman has a change, be it a stress level, a hormone level, any kind of grief event, we develop cysts. It's just a normal, natural reaction of the immune system.
I'm really glad that you brought that up. I'm very intrigued and interested in German new medicine. I'm looking for a practitioner to interview here
it's
because
practice.
The whole premise is that disease is trauma based, and it's that ultimately it's actually a positive thing that the body is going through a disease process to process out the trauma, emotional or physical. And so when we think that we're actually sick, it's actually the body's process of healing.
Exactly.
And so you can continue.
Thank you. And that's one of the things that she told me, this breast health specialist, who used to be a mammographer and a breast surgeon, who had converted to being a sonographer, which is ultrasound, and a thermographer. And she said, she was the one who was telling me, women get cysts throughout their lifetime, and they are your immune system's greatest resources produced by the spinal cord. And the last thing you want to do is aspirate a cyst, because that's like blowing up your own tanks. That's the white blood cells being sent to the area to help it to heal and to bring homeostasis and balance and nutrition and all the good things that our immune system does. And so, but I called the breast surgeon's office and I said, what's the usual process here? And they said, well, first we need your most recent mammogram results. Well, that's not going to happen. I said, what else? I said, well, then we would, because there's a palpable something that you can feel there, we would want to do a biopsy. If it's fluid, we'll aspirate it. If it's solid, we'll want to biopsy. We'll probably want to biopsy the fluid. And if there's the slightest indication of a threat, even a future threat, we'd probably want a lumpectomy. I'm like, well, thank you very much. I'll have to call you back. Checked my schedule. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I realized at that point that thermography saved my breast from going under the knife unnecessarily, because that breast health specialist determined that it was a benign fluid cyst, and that I had 4 others, one in the other side of that same breast and 3 in the other, and it was all a natural process. I eliminated everything acidic from my body. I did my intestinal detoxes, liver, kidney, and all that detox, and within 3 months, all the cysts were gone. That taught me a lot about thermography and all the different things, first of all, they can see in the uses. And that's when I fell in love with it. And when I decided, I could do this for other women for the rest of my life. Since I've been in the business, what I've discovered is that the breasts, in and of themselves, they're not isolated. They're part of the system. They're attached to the body. They're at the affect of everything else going on in our bodies, like you were saying, especially gut health, because that's where health starts and that's where disease starts and that's where disease ends, when you turn the health of your gut around again. But I discovered that the breasts are kind of like the canaries in the coal mine. If there's something going on in the breast, there's always something going on somewhere else in the body.
Of course. You
can guarantee it. And there's almost always an emotional component too, especially when it comes to the breast, because this is symbolically, we feed our babies from our breasts and we kind of symbolically feed the world from our breasts. This is the heart chakra, the heart center. This is our love center. And it's all, even the lungs are related to grief, right? So this is where we give to the world, is from that center. So you can always trace back breast issues to stress, loss, death, all kinds of things like that. And so the gut health is really key. And that's a very clear thing that we see quite often. thyroid inflammation, carotid artery inflammation, which is a window into all your arteries. If there's inflammation in one, it's going to be in all of them. Dental inflammation. What we don't realize, and we're not taught, is that 90% of the human nervous system is functional, not sensory. That means 90% of the time we can't feel what's going on inside of it. It's all in the background, just like you see your monitor on your computer, but you don't see the brains and the inner workings of what's creating that.
We can't feel our immune system functioning. We can't feel our nervous system functioning.
That's right. Only 10% of the time is pain your first indicator. 90% of the time it's your last. So you don't want to wait until you can feel something, and that's the gift that thermography gives us, is being able to visualize what we can't feel.
Very early indicators.
Before it becomes disease or cancer, because what do we know inflammation to be? The precursor to most disease.
Yes.
It's the immune system really at work trying to heal the area or degeneration of the area.
And this technology has come a long way, correct?
Oh, volumes and light years, and it's like rocket fuel.
It's
today.
not just looking at hot spots in the body, right?
No,
this is far more technical, and the software has become very advanced.
Thank you. Yes, and it was first developed by the military as a way to see at night. It was night vision, and it was classified. It was literally top secret in the early 50s. It was released in 55, and medicine started picking up and experimenting with it in 56, 57. So it's been around more than 57 years, and I might say the better part at 57 years suppressed. So it's made its way back into the forefront, and that's why our mission is to really get the word out about thermography and create a movement where we're shifting the focus from breast cancer awareness to breast health awareness. Because why would we want to focus on the thing we don't want? We want to focus on the thing we do want. We're all very much aware of breast cancer. It's gone from 1 in 100 to 1 in 7 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime.
Well, and like you said, it's very natural for women to get cysts. And so just learning that cysts in breast is actually normal and healthy. Mm-hmm. And that there's ways to help process them. And a lot of times these cysts, or even the cancer, when it does happen, is happening as a result of a very intelligent process that the body, the body really does know how to heal itself. And that cyst or that cancer is oftentimes happening, and I'm going out on a limb here because I believe this, because it's helping us to resolve something. Mm-hmm. It's actually part of the healing process.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, now when you found out that you had these cysts or these lumps, did you look back and say, oh gosh, this is what I'm processing? Or do you think you remember the trauma or traumas that you were processing?
Well, interestingly enough, it was perimenopausal. I was perimenopausal. Okay. So it was part of my hormone change. And I didn't piece the two together because no one teaches women about menopause before they get perimenopausal or menopausal.
No one teaches women about women's health. I mean, there's some wonderful
I had no clue.
Teachers out there now.
I thought I was going to be fertile forever as long as I kept detoxing and eating good food. And, it's like, and so it was a huge blow to start learning about how everything comes to a halt and all the, the emotional shifts and so forth. But, what we don't realize, again, is that how our immune system functions, and that it is ultimately the thing that keeps us healthy and alive. So when people say that they're a survivor, be it breast cancer or any other kind of cancer, if they've gone through conventional treatment, I have to say that they survived the treatment more than the cancer, because, again, if you look at the statistics that are not readily available to us, we would live longer with the cancer than we would with the treatment. Right. And you're the only one who could say, don't get a mammogram. I can't. I can be shut down. An MD, someone who's licensed by the system, can be
the doctors are, and I tell patients, I tell people that I speak to often, please have respect for your doctors. They have to recommend what they're doing, or they're liable. They do not have any other choice but to refer you out to that specialist or to write that prescription or to recommend that surgery. These are the tools they have in their toolbox. If they don't recommend those things, they can go to jail. They can be sued.
Well, the truth is, and thank you for bringing that up, if a doctor does not recommend a mammogram and that woman develops breast cancer, she can actually sue that doctor for not recommending a mammogram.
Right.
And it's a sad state of affairs because in my heart of hearts, and we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because I have a huge respect for emergency medicine.
Oh, especially.
Because if Humpty Dumpty falls off a wall or gets in a car accident, I want them to piece Humpty Dumpty back together again, especially if it's me. And in my heart of hearts, I know that everyone who has gone to medical school, be it a nurse, doctor, or in between, in their heart of hearts believe that they're going to be of service.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's a system that's evolved into treating symptoms and managing disease, and they're not taught anything about really health, about prevention, or
It's true. They're not taught anything about health.
4,000 hours of training, they maybe get 2 to 4 hours of optional nutrition classes, and so it's driven in a very different way. It's not prevention. It's not about how to stay well. It's once you're sick, it's a sick care system.
Right.
So it's very much a misnomer to call it health care because it's not taking care of health. When do we go see a doctor? We're knocking on their door when we can feel something, and that's why we say you don't want to wait until you can feel something because again, 90% of the time it's going to be.
And a lot of the
serious.
doctors haven't been given the health and wellness preventative care tools such as
And
thermal
bless their
imagery.
hearts,
And this is
would
why
if they could.
I do promote organizations like the Institute of Functional Medicine
Mm-hmm.
that is giving doctors a new medical model and doing an amazing job at creating new tools.
Yes.
And I do have to say this, the existing cancer treatment protocol is archaic, dark ages, and torture. I think that eventually when we come out of this medical dark ages again, that we will see it all like we look at bloodletting and leeches, which now leeches have made a comeback. So,
Yeah, right.
so maybe that wasn't so.
There's something to the science of that, not so much the leech part of it.
No, I
but, there's something to the science that works. But I'm glad you said that. It's unfortunate because, like I was saying about the immune system, it is the one thing that will ultimately keep you alive. So unfortunately, especially with chemo, which really it's more about crossing your fingers and hoping that it kills more bad cells than good cells because it will do both. And again, it's just that the person had a strong enough immune system to survive that.
The treatment.
And the cancer.
Yeah, the radiation,
it's
chemo,
not so much the cancer.
surgery is all so hard, so traumatic to be able to survive that. And particularly
diminishes.
radiation chemo, if it didn't kill you the first time, it is going to contribute to your demise, and certainly a demise sooner than you would have had you not done it.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate. I actually witnessed that with both my parents.
Oh.
And I bludgeoned them for 36 years while I was on this path before they passed. And not everyone's cooperative, and especially family
health
members.
is a very
but we don't
personal.
know.
Ultimately, it is
don't
a
know each person's
personal.
path and
It
their
is a
choice.
personal path, and,
Yes.
and we have to respect people's choices.
totally
and I
agree.
and I have to, in saying what I just said about the cancer treatment system, I still respect people choosing it.
Absolutely.
Because how scary to walk into a doctor's office and be told you have cancer, and for them to look at the global market and say, well, the United States, we have a high success rate compared to some. Wow. And so we can look at those statistics as well. But I really love that you made the point that the cancer or death by cancer rates go up astronomically comparatively when you look at the people that go in and get cut or drugged as opposed to the people that don't.
Yes. And that's the other issue with cutting into anything. I really believe and have learned from all my research that when we have a skin for a reason, it's to protect a very pristine, sterile environment that our immune system desperately needs to not have invaded, that it's always trying to achieve and maintain healthy homeostasis. And anytime we cut through the skin, we're exposing. I mean, how many people die in the hospitals of something they didn't even go into the hospital for?
Death by medicine.
I don't even want to go into the numbers of that. So
a very real issue.
And it's sad, and it's like, oh gosh, I wish we could just all get together and get on the same page, because I know these people are dedicated. I know they really care and they want to do something to be of service and make a difference. And it's just really sad what it's evolved to. And again, the immune system is so precious. It's the greatest gift that has been put on planet Earth, and it's in our bodies.
Right.
And we have very little respect for it. No one teaches us how to take care of it. And the biggest thing is to keep toxins out. We are subjected
out,
to
nutrition, and
toxins out, nutrition,
proper rest, because the body
out,
heals itself.
Absolutely.
This is what it does. It continues to thrive and survive as long as we support it correctly.
Well, and the thing that we have taken into consideration, Lisa, is that there's thousands more chemicals today than existed 100 years, maybe even 50 years ago, that our grandparents and our parents weren't subjected to. Grandparents that smoked until they were in their 90s, but they're smoking unfiltered organic tobacco that wasn't laced with 1,000
and
chemicals.
the food was higher nutrient content.
Oh my gosh,
and
it was naturally organic.
There was no
There weren't the
electromagnetic
pesticides
pollution.
Right.
And
Yes.
they tended to actually walk on the earth, wear
They didn't have
leather
fluoride in the
soles.
water. They walked in the earth. They worked in the garden. They had their hands in the soil. They didn't have to be in bare feet. They had their hands in the soil. So they were being grounded in earth the whole time.
Yeah.
And no one takes these things into consideration. We had my husband's former wife smoked and drank. Oh, well, my family in Kentucky, smoked until they were 90, 95 and drank. Yeah, but what were they smoking? What were they drinking? She died of pancreatic cancer at 56.
Wow.
It's just sad. We're not making the connection. We got to connect the dots here and make the correlation to where we've evolved to. We're living in a toxic soup. And we've got to protect our immune system more so now than ever before. So prevention is the key, and supporting the immune system, taking the toxic burden off, and putting nutrients, healthy, good organic nutrients, pure nutrients in. They say 92 to 95% of supplements have toxic, fillers and excipients and flowing agents and everything. And so we have to be very scrutinizing about everything. And getting back to what thermography can see, the coolest thing is that it highlights where the immune system is calling for help now. And so you can get on it immediately and know how to prioritize where to focus your attention, because that's where your immune system's going, help, I need help here and here and here. And away we go. And we share 36 years of resources I've been gathering. My brain's about to explode.
And that's just you. You obviously work with a network of practitioners.
Absolutely.
So first of all, obviously, everyone and anyone can benefit from getting a thermal image done.
Absolutely, everyone. And especially even men. They have bodies too.
Right. Right. So we're not just talking about breast health and wellness through thermal imagery.
No.
We're imaging. We're talking about overall health and wellness and preventative care. This is such a valuable tool to prevent illness and to keep yourself healthy long before disease happens. And so who's the typical patient that you see or client?
Well, they're going to be someone who's looking for alternative. They're looking for a more natural approach to define where their body's in trouble, their immune system's calling for help, and get on a path of natural health and wellness and healing if they have something that they need to heal. So the key thing is if they have symptoms, sometimes it's like, I don't want to say too late, but it's like, get in quick, because you want to catch things as early as you possibly can. It's going to lower your medical bills. It's going to lower your trauma from any medical procedures, be it natural or conventional, which is usually synthetic and unnatural. But the thing that most people don't realize is that when you talk about the digestive system, the beginning of that is your dental. 90 to 95% of breast cancer patients had tooth infections they either didn't know they had or were neglecting. 90 to 95%. That tells you how much your dental health affects your overall health. So dental, intestinal, I'll give you the keys. Dental, intestinal, endocrine, because your hormone system works in concert, in harmony with your immune system. And then structural integrity, because chiropractic is huge in terms of your nervous system is connected to your spine. And that talks to everything. That's how your brain communicates with every part of your body and through electrical impulses. So structural, dental, endocrine, immune, especially 60 to 80% of your immune system resides in your gut, in your intestines. And we absorb 80% of our water through our intestines. So if that's plagued with meat, dairy, eggs, processed food, white flours, the casein in milk is the thing that we have the hardest time breaking down. That's what makes it white. We'll take the fat.
No one can digest it. We're not baby cows. We're not baby cows. We can't digest.
Only
especially
baby cow
not
has
homogenized.
the digestive system for that. They actually gave baby cows an experiment of pasteurized, homogenized milk, and most of them didn't survive it.
Of course.
So, yeah. But that's a whole nother conversation. But thank you. It's usually a patient who's looking, they want to see those indicators so they can get ahead of the curves. They can get ahead of anything that could be breaking down their system and getting into a disease process. And
so somebody comes to you, they're getting a dental, endocrine, digestive, they're getting all of this information in a report that comes back to them. You do the actual imaging.
I do.
The images go to an actual doctor, correct?
Absolutely. And we have the highest standards. Again, I came to this as a patient. So I wasn't approached by a camera salesperson. I wasn't working in a clinic where they said, hey, how would you like to be our thermographer? I didn't apply for a job. So I came to this as a patient, and having been an entrepreneur before, I thought, what would I want behind the service and behind the technician? And so I called every thermographer in the United States that I could find that had any tenure in their business, and I said, what would you do differently? What camera would you have? What reading service? Where would you get your training? What association would you affiliate with? And I chose the best the industry had to offer. My camera is literally space age. It's the closest thermography's ever come to a real photograph. And we're imaging the energy again that's coming off the surface of your skin. It can tell the temperature difference between hairs. That's how fine it is. The older technology, your hair is like cartoon hair. You can't even see the strands. But that tells you how soon we can distinguish a difference in patterns and temperature. That's the most sensitive that a camera's ever been. My reading physician is an MD. And they have very extensive, there's a faction of chiropractors who do it as well. Tremendous respect for them. I'm glad they're doing thermography. They get training in thermography in their training, so they're big believers of it. So I really have a tremendous amount of support and affection for chiropractors, again, because the structure is so key. But then my thermologist is an MD, and he was trained naturopathically because he was actually trained as a flight surgeon 35 years ago, fell out of love with patching and radiating and everything unnatural. He wanted to be a true healer and spent 20 years in pathology labs. The better part of that spent in saliva testing labs to really find out how the immune system works, what actually causes disease and what actually heals it, and has written a book on hormone replacement therapy and owns a saliva testing lab. So the man is brilliant, and he teaches other doctors how to read
And this is the doctor that's reviewing all of your thermal images.
So that's my commitment, is that everyone gets the best the industry has to offer. I can sleep at night. I feel better about what I'm providing, and they can feel good about it. They're getting the best value. And then we handhold them. So you can see by just my doing this podcast that we take a very educational approach. We feel that an educated patient is an empowered patient. They're going to make better decisions, more educated choices. They're going to get better results. They're going to feel better about the whole process of what they're doing. And they're going to know their own bodies. I mean, we're not educated on our own bodies. And that's why, unfortunately, they default to what they know. They only know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. And same thing with doctors and people who, they only know what they've been taught. They don't know what they haven't been taught. I can tell you that, if they only get 15 minutes per patient, they're certainly not up till 2 a.m. on the internet researching the latest development in thermography. They just don't have the energy. It's sad.
And the channels that have been established for well over 50, almost 100 years, is that it's the pharmaceutical industry that goes in and does the educating and the bringing of new treatments. And so those are the tools that are delivered.
They create the chemicals that poison us in our food and our water supply and in the air and in our industry. And those are the chemicals that make us sick. And then they provide the chemicals that they represent, make us well, but there's no healing that goes on in that system whatsoever. I've never seen anyone heal in that system. They kind of patch things, and we always ask. My husband always says, whenever we're talking to someone who went through the breast cancer treatment thing, what did they tell you to do different?
Right. They don't address
99.9% of the time, they say nothing. Just go back to your life and keep eating what you're eating.
The cause.
But no, not addressing the cause.
Nobody's addressing the cause.
And no one's taught to address the cause. And I used to tell my own grandmother, Grandma, stop eating all that white bread. Stop eating all that sugar. Oh, what do you think you are, a doctor? You know, if it was bad for me, my doctor would tell me it was bad for me.
Doctor doesn't know, unfortunately.
She was probably on 12 meds when she died. My mom was on a dozen when she died. My dad was on at least 8 or 9.
Well, and I tend to believe that all of this is very purposeful. Mm-hmm. And we can look at it, we can judge it and say how horrific that our medical system is an illness system, and that generally it doesn't educate about health, it doesn't educate about nutrition, it doesn't look at root cause issues. Some of the new organizations like functional medicine do, or holistic medicine do.
Integrative medicine.
But the industrialized medicine doesn't.
We call it commercialized medicine.
Commercialized. Yes, industrialized, an industry. Yeah. So
it's profit-based.
I look
People
at
think
it.
It's non-profit. It's
all for profit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I look at it like these things. I like this saying: pain pushes and vision pulls.
Oh yes.
So the existing commercialized, industrialized medical system is the pain that is pushing us in a direction toward the vision, which is one of, first of all, autonomy, self-reliance. Mm-hmm. It used to be if something was wrong, of course we went to our doctor.
Yes. And
our doctor would give us the answer and tell us what to do, and we would just dutifully follow their instructions. Mm-hmm. Well, it's obviously gone haywire. Maybe 100 years ago, most people went to the doctor for infection or a broken bone, and that worked. Mm-hmm. But today, by and large, people are going to the doctor for chronic inflammatory diseases. Yes. And there isn't a medication or a surgery that can help a chronic inflammatory disease. This is chronic, long
steroids and anti-inflammatory drugs, and come on, but it doesn't get to the cause of that. And
right, it doesn't address the cause. Thank you. You're right. That's they would address some of the symptoms. Yes. So I think it's actually a beautiful thing that's positive. Mm-hmm. Not that going through it is positive, mm-hmm. but it's positive that it's driving people in a direction of taking responsibility for their own health and wellness, exactly like you did mm-hmm. when you had lumps and said, mm-hmm. no, I'm not going to go this route. I'm going to take responsibility and figure it out myself. And I think that's ultimately what part of the brilliance of what happens in life and in the world, that there's this paradigm shift taking place. And while the medical system has its problems, it's going to change. And the big change is it's not going to be the face of our doctor, it's going to be the face in the mirror.
Yes, becoming your own physician.
That's right.
And that's how we were designed. And nature was provided for us. I mean, everything that we need is in nature, not just the nutrients, but even the herbs and the medicinal, even cacao, which is what we commonly know as chocolate today. Unfortunately, it's over-processed and cooked and not organic, and so that's when it does damage. But raw cacao from the Amazon forest has been used medicinally for centuries. It's
an antioxidant and phytonutrient.
It heals.
Yes.
I mean, it has very healing properties.
It has anandamines, makes us happy.
Yes.
So I'd like to glean a story, gain some information of at least one patient or client that's come to you, and just kind of give us an idea of what happened with that patient or that client.
Oh, well, gosh, thank you for asking. I wasn't even expecting that. Well, she came to us just for standard routine imaging, and there was quite a bit of vascularity actually up in the armpit area, the underarm. It's called the axilla in medical terms, or axilla. Everyone has a different way of pronouncing that. And she had been on a standard path for a long time and had just gotten on a health path within the last year or two. And we turned in her results, and it came back suspicious. So she went for further testing and found that she it was breast cancer in the lymph. It was never in the breast. So this is the other challenge with mammograms and even CAT scans and MRIs and things of that nature. I'll repeat that. This is the other thing with mammograms and CAT scans and MRIs is that they're only going to look at the soft tissue of the breast. Sometimes they'll look at the in lymph nodes, but a mammogram can't compress the lymph.
It's not going to see
way
the
up
rest
on
of
the chest.
tissue.
The lymph nodes are way up in the chest and in the axilla, the armpit. And so she even went to do on her doctor's order because of the suspicious thing that we found. She did a mammogram, she did an MRI, and an ultrasound. And nothing was seen because it was still too small to be seen, but we were seeing the vascularity that was going to that area. Well, in further investigation, she had lesions and she had metastases to the liver, the lung, and the bone. We referred her to a naturopathic oncologist, and she was cleared within 3 months. None of the tumors were visible on any of the anatomical devices, and we were seeing the vascularity shrink back. So there are natural ways to, and most people don't know that there's such a thing as a naturopathic oncologist, but there are natural ways, and this is one of the things that I discovered in all my research to treat cancer. When we started out, cancer is not a death sentence. It's a wake-up call. And that's what you were saying early on. It's a wake-up call. It's our immune system saying, hey, I need help. I'm like buckling under all this pressure and toxicity. And so, again, if you just take the toxins off, and some people have healed just by doing an intestinal detox and detoxing their
clearing
filtration
the
organs.
plaque and
so it flushes out, and then the immune system is freed up to really do its job and deal with the big guys, and the big guns, so to speak. And so she did another test. In 5 months, she was completely clear. And no signs of any vascularity or that there was cancer there in the area. Blood tests, saliva, everything that you can do to test.
So it's amazing. So how long do you think that vascularity that's detected on a thermal image, how long do you think it would take for that kind of, the vascularity to develop into something that traditional methods would be able to detect?
Well, again, we're seeing the vascularity in most cases. I mean, no screening test is 100% accurate, so we boast about a 92 to 98% accuracy. And I just want to add, when you add an anatomical device like ultrasound, which is not damaging to the breast tissue or any tissue because there's no radiation, you get as close to 100% accuracy as you can from a screening tool, from an imaging device. But
there's a mass, it's not going to detect vascularity, which the thermal image does.
This is what we get is in most cases we can see the vascularity within the first year or two that the mass or the cancer cells are calling for a blood supply because they're renegade. They're outside of the system and they don't have their own blood supply. So they actually trick the brain into supplying blood. And that's the thermal signature we see of that heat because that's neovascularity means new. Neo means new as in neonatal. Vascularity, of course, blood supply, and that new blood supply, those blood vessels are not, the sympathetic nervous system is not matured yet. And so they don't constrict with the cooling process that we have in the room. We have an imaging room that's about 68, 72 degrees. So it just cools the skin enough that we have a uniform vasoconstriction. And so the healthy vascularity constricts, but the more pathologically related vascularity does not. And this is the key thing that thermography sees way before it'll ever become a mass.
That's fascinating. So just to recap, because I want to make sure I get this. So cancer tricks the brain into supplying it with blood. Mm-hmm. It grows new blood vessels, so neovascularity. So new blood vessels grow as a result of cancer cells, the microscopic cells.
Right.
And so the thermal image is able to detect that vascularity long before anything becomes a mass. Mm-hmm.
About 98% of the time.
Right.
92
and
98%
that image goes to the doctor. The doctor, who's well-versed in more than just thermal imaging.
Oh, yes.
Is going to look at it and tell a lot of things, not just about neovascularity, but other layers of information.
Indicators of fibrocystic activity, hormone imbalance, vascular inflammation, indicating the vascular system is at risk, indicating the structural system is at risk, the myofascial, which is the muscular. The thing that most people don't know is there have been studies that most of us don't ever see. And especially with the getting the read on the breast, every study that's ever come back, and one in particular I'll quote, 58,000 women over, 12 or 15 year period, the overwhelming result was that an abnormal thermography was the single most important and reliable indicator for future breast health risk of any exam available for screening the breasts. And that's relative to the rest of the body. So anything else that thermography that can see an indicator of, it's going to be the earliest we can see something, because again, we're seeing the functional read. What the body, your immune system, how your immune system is speaking to you again.
So we could literally prevent most breast cancer.
Oh,
with thermal imaging.
Yeah, and with healthy practices.
And once again, it's not just for breast health. So I mean, you're referring people to natural oncologists. You call it a
naturopathic oncologist,
naturopathic oncologist,
and alternative oncologists, and integrative oncologists, and there's so many different new ways to treat cancer that are available to us. My husband is a surfer. He got some skin cancer. We're using, some salve to eliminate it, and some ozone, which is concentrated oxygen. And it's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. And it's nature's brilliance, nature's genius. It only kills cancer in abnormal cells, these things. And it's not touching the healthy tissue. It's like, this is almost crazy. It's like, wait, this is amazing to be witnessing this, so...
It is amazing. And hopefully someday thermal imaging is available and should be standard practice for everyone all the time, because we would be preventing disease and at the same time educating people about health, because it's such a wonderful educational tool when you learn things like, vascularity, neovascularity is basically proof that it's in the beginning stages.
That's right.
Of going awry, and we can rectify it very easily with nutrition and detoxification. And so I love that we've covered the whole process. Yeah. Other than getting a thermal image, what would be your number one wellness tip for people?
Cleansing and detoxing. Especially if you've ever consumed any of the SAD diet, we call it the standard American diet. Processed, fast food, cooked food, even cooked food can be acidic. Even if it's organic. So you want to limit even your amount of cooked food. As much raw and organic plant-based. There was a China study. They were trying to prove that the people who ate meat in China didn't get cancer. The people who didn't did. And it proved opposite. The people who ate meat were the wealthy. They were the ones who could afford meat, dairy, and eggs. And people in the field eating the rice and the vegetables were not getting cancer. Now, they did an experiment, and they discovered if you introduce 20% of animal product, you still weren't going to get cancer. So it's all about balance. It's all about, that whole thing, moderation, even moderation and moderation. But the key thing is prevention is about keeping the immune system freed up to do its job. And so if you we change the filters in our cars more in our vacuum cleaners and our air conditioning units more than we do in our bodies. And so if you just keep that clean and you eat clean food, not what we think is healthy, we really need to educate ourselves on what that really is, that's going to prevent disease. And then when you do the natural health screening that doesn't cause damage, that doesn't do more harm than good, which is the unfortunate thing of all the studies that have been done on our adversary, unfortunately, the mammogram, they are proving that about 75% of breast cancers have been caused by radiation, and primarily the radiation in mammograms is the strongest radiation known to medical imaging. So when the breast tissue is the most distressed and squished, they're irradiating it with the most damaging radiation known to medical imaging. That increases your chances of breast cancer by 5% every time.
I'm really glad that you just said that, because I've believed that they are causing, that mammograms are causing cancer. and increasing rates of cancer.
Not just breast cancer. So you've got to, everyone knows that there's background radiation and that it sprays, which is why it's called radiation, because it radiates out. And so what is the cancer that's on the rise for women since we started doing screening mammography, which is every year, which mammograms are actually originally intended to be used only in surgical situations to pinpoint the cancer because they've already identified the person had cancer so they could find it and remove it. It was not ever meant to be a screening tool to do every year.
The mammograms were never meant to be a screening tool.
Meant to be a screening tool. So the key thing to know is that we're not, here's what I want to say. If your doctor insists on mammograms, do the mammogram. Add the thermography to it. It's not an either or. It doesn't have to be either or. Do both.
Right.
The mammogram will see if something's advanced. The thermography will see something way before it becomes something that a mammogram can see. We're not again trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want to go against the system. There is a use for every system, and people have to do what they are comfortable with and what they're familiar with. But step out of the box just enough to give yourself the gift of seeing what the usual conventional devices can't see. And then this way, when you use the two together, you have a better chance of survival and doing something way before it becomes disease or cancer, or something that's irreversible and irreparable.
Wonderful, Lisa. I appreciate all of this information so very much. I think it's so important to get it out to the world about thermal imaging and discovery screenings, and I just am so grateful, like I said, that you've come and shared all the information.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is Lisa Thorpe with Health and Wellness Encinitas with Lisa Kalison, Discovery Screenings. Thank you so much. And Screening.
So
Discovery Screening.
We do screenings.
At Discovery Screening. Well, the link will be on the podcast,
Yes.
so that is foolproof. It doesn't rely on me.
You know, I want to acknowledge you, Lisa, for being willing to step out yourself and do this kind of work, because it is so important. You are the pebble, and we're the
I'm
rippling
having fun.
effect.
It's
I know you are, but this is so important because you're actually helping the whole planet, not just women about this topic, but men and the health of the whole planet. And I want to acknowledge your listeners, because just by coming to this podcast, everything that they've learned from you or from me and all of your other podcasts, they're going to touch other lives with that information.
we can help. And that's what the whole purpose
And
of the
they're gonna be a
podcast is,
ripple.
to help people, is
They're
to
gonna be
get
one
the
of the
information out there, because there aren't channels to teach people the truth about wellness. And so that is the whole purpose, is to teach the truth about wellness and give people the tools and access to things that actually work.
and actually heal.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to acknowledge you, and I want to acknowledge your listeners
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I thank them too.
for coming here.
So, and on that note, I just wanted to let everybody know we now have a comment line, or people can email us at healthandwellnessencinitas.com. And if people want to call in and leave a message or a question, a complaint, recommendations, I'm open. The line, or the phone number, which will be on the website, is 206-600-2475. Once again, that call-in number is 206-600-2475. And once again, this is Lisa with Health and Wellness Encinitas. Thank you so much for being here and for listening, and have a great day.
This show was produced by John Beethan and brought to you by Alkaway.com, the makers of UltraStream, working like nature to filter, alkalize, and naturally energize water, returning it to its natural, pristine state.